So Russia's invasion of Ukraine making huge waves across the globe, but it can be hard to see how a conflict happening more than 5,000 miles away could affect us right here in the U.S. and here in Western Washington. And joining us now to help explain how we could feel the impact of the war in Ukraine is the Washington Post's Jean Whalen. Jean, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, a lot of questions for you. So you say the first place that Americans are likely to feel a change is at the gas pump. Why is that?
That's because Russia is one of the world's biggest oil and natural gas producers. So gasoline comes from crude oil. Russia sends a lot of crude oil out onto world markets. And if there's any disruption to those exports, which so far there have not been, and a lot of analysts think that there will not be, but if there are, that could lead ultimately to higher gasoline prices for us here in the U.S. and for consumers everywhere.
And what kind of measures can the government use to offset rising gas prices and how effective they are?
Well, one thing that President Biden mentioned yesterday was he was willing and nearing a decision to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is the U.S. government well of spare oil that we keep at several underground facilities in Texas. So these big cavernous vaults where we store oils precisely for this kind of purpose. Now, the price of oil yesterday did spike very early in the day, and then it came back down to previous levels, and it is down a little bit today. So at the moment, there is no real crisis with the oil price. But should that happen, should we see this conflict worsen and fears about Russian exports getting cut off rise, then President Biden could potentially take some of the oil out of that reserve and bring it onto the market to ease prices.
And other than filling up your car, how do changing oil prices affect the prices of things that we find, online or buy at the store?
They indirectly affect a lot of the economy. So, most of our economy runs on energy, on transportation and electricity created from oil and gas and coal and renewable energy. So when the price of energy goes up, that feeds through to a lot of things, including the items that you might buy at the grocery store, because they need to be trucked sometimes across town or across the state or across the country to get to you. So the grocery store ends up paying the transportation company more to move those items because the transportation company is paying more for gas or for diesel fuel. And that means ultimately maybe your strawberries or your tortillas end up costing more. It might mean that the t-shirt you're buying from an e-commerce retailer will end up costing more because the transportation costs are higher. So it can feed through to many other items.
Now let's focus on energy really quick. You mentioned that Europe is going to struggle to replace all those lost energy resources. Could this accelerate alternative energy adoption in Europe or even in the U.S.?
It very well could. The Post had a story the other day about how European Union officials were attempting to accelerate their already existing efforts to transfer more of Europe onto renewable sources of energy, because Europe in particular really does rely on Russian gas, natural gas, more than other parts of the world do. Europe gets 30% of its natural gas, which is different from gasoline. Natural gas is used to heat homes and run your stovetop and that sort of thing. Europe gets 30% of its natural gas from Russian pipelines. And so Europe is quite concerned about those supplies remaining stable, although, again, no signs yet that they've been affected. So they are now trying to really accelerate their switch to more solar and wind and other renewable sources of energy.
Jean Whalen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think you really put in perspective for a lot of people who might be following the news but don't know how it's going to impact them more than 5,000 miles away. Is there anything else that you would like to add when it comes to just your normal everyday person and how this can affect them?
Well, the main thing is the prices have not spiked yet. So this is not feeding through to crude oil prices or gasoline prices at the moment. So there's no need to panic over this. And it's very possible that it won't. There are many other awful effects of this war, but so far, rising gasoline prices is not yet one of them. It's just a possibility down the road.